We're going to continue creating art for the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book that we've been producing. So give me a second here to check my signal, and I'll go through my intro spiel, and then we will get to work. So hold on here real quick. Checking my signal. Mic check, mic check. Hey folks, yeah, no, that doesn't appear to be it. Let's home. Check, check, check. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. We're going through. All right, cool. Let's see. Get through into my intro spiel. All right, hey. Right, so my name's Theurgy. I create role-playing game supplements. I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for the past number of years, and there are a slew of links in the description down below showing different work that I've already produced. I publish on the DMsGuild.com. Any of the things that you click on down below has a free preview that you can check out some of the works that I've done anyway. They all have free previews. So if you are here for the pixels, if you click into previews, you'll see probably about 150 different illustrations across the different books that are linked down below. You can find more if you search for me. If you're here for the for Dungeons and Dragons, then all the stuff of again, lots of previews. Players and DMs alike can use the content that I've published, regardless of what side of the screen you're on, to enhance your character or to enhance the depth of your campaign. If you think these ideas are cool, consider making some purchases to support further behavior. Otherwise, you can support the channel by following me on Twitter at Theurgy, if you're still on Twitter. And if you are catching this signal, if you could like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, it really helps grow the channel. So I believe it was we have a new subscriber. We had somebody show up yesterday. I think his name was Jason, coming by, hanging out with us. Thanks a lot for subscribing, man. Really appreciate you. So we created this book cover back. What are we at? We're episode 216 right now. We made this one back around episode 15, so it's like 200 some odd episodes ago that you can see us creating this one. Where we're at currently is we are working on a ship avoiding Big Bada Boom. So this is reverse from what we had. We mirrored this from where it was yesterday, but it seems like the spacing here between with the pilot option, subtitle, and the space available, this seems like to be the best way to do it. So let's get rid of this layer mask here. If we were to disable this layer mask, this is how this thing would come in. Bah, eyes, goop, blop. Got a timer set, so got my water, got my coffee. Let's get back to it. So we're going to work out, we're going to continue working out the how the smudge should work. So we're going to just smudge this stuff in for a bit further. And once we're happy with the skyscape, we'll then be able to finish processing the fireball explosion. My nose! There it is. You know, I really need to figure out the lighting on the strip here so I can have things like this fade properly into it. For now, let's just assume it's gonna be something like this. Because if I can make a border here where things would blend together, so I can have a seamless transition from this piece into this border, and then also have like down here have a piece seamlessly fit into the border down here and here, to have just natural bleeds into the border, that would be ideal. But that will also require me to take a minute and slow down and build that thing, which I haven't done yet. So it looks like we're going to be spending some time building out border art this week. So that seems to be about where we're at. You know, honestly, I probably should have done it earlier. That's okay. Fade this in like that. That feels pretty good. Do a ripped space like this. Kind of like that. That could be an option. I can come back and do that frilling if I want. But right now, I just want to make sure I have phase transition good. What's going on with this fireball? Outline's goofy. Gonna make you sweat till you bleed. Everybody jump, jump, everybody jump. I think we'll have this figured out here. This actually takes a little bit of time getting this to a place where I feel like it's you know, natural. Tasty. God, coffee's good today. There's this brand called Happy Camper. It's a brown sugar coffee blend, and boy oh boy, it's tasty. It's a little, it tastes a little bitter coming out the first day, but the second day grounds are really tame. And most of the bitterness works out after the first batch. I don't like 3 batches off the same grounds, but I like 2 batches. I should probably figure out a way to keep some of the old and blend in with new, so I can have a cycling consistency of slightly old. It's just a matter of how would I separate the 2-day-old grind from the now 1-day-old grounds. I think is the word I'm looking for. Anyway, it's a little difficult to figure that out. There's got to be a way of like cycling through. Maybe like have a double press with like old and then new on top of it. I don't know. We're working here. Move. Hey, Shiner, how you doing? Trying to work this this black space into to fill this space without making it feel clumsy, you know? Fireball! We'll figure this out soon enough. Got to get that blend in there, so it just yeah, it's not. Framing is always an issue for me. Like, how do I want to frame things? Like the spacescape lends itself nicely to fades, and a lot of, like, if you check out the works that I have down below, a lot of the previous ones have like these sheet tears. Always room for a fireball. That's the description that we're talking about. We're talking about pilot roll, the pilot roll here. If we drop that out here real quick. So you got ship rolls, right? So describing the Spelljammer's adventures in space, the only role necessary to operate a spelljamming ship is that of the pilot. In the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration document that we're creating here, the piloting is just one of many actions you can take aboard a ship in combination with other actions you can normally take at the 5-foot scale of adventuring. So the role of pilot, you can move the ship, and duties include moving the ship and attacking with ship melee weapons. Siege commanders duties are commanding siege crews to attack with ranged ship weapons. Squadron commander duties are commanding ally ships to move and attack, and then the support role duties are assisting pilots and commanders. So a pilot requires focusing on a helm to be able to perform its duties, and the squadron commander and support roles requires focusing on an orrery. So depending on which role it is that you're using your action economy towards, here's the options that you have. So just as a verbal command, a siege commander can take command of siege crews and siege weapons. A squadron commander with a verbal command can take command of various ships that are within a squadron. Object interaction, a pilot can move a ship as an object interaction, and the squadron commander can use object interaction through the orrery station to move the squadron. In actions that can be taken using your normal action economy, the action, instead of casting, you could cast a spell if you wanted to as your action, but instead, if you're a pilot focusing on a helm, you could attack with the ship, you could defend the ship, you can disengage movement with the ship, you can hide, move the ship itself like an object interaction, as well as take the ready action. And then a siege commander can use the ready action to attack with siege weapons, as well as ready and attack. A squadron commander can use actions to attack with a squadron of ships, move the squadron, similar to the object interaction, as well as disengage the squadron from combat and ready actions. And then the support character can help focus, can scan, and can target enemies. And then if you take the attack action, then the pilot can make ship melee attacks. Attack actions by the siege commander is ranged ship attacks. Ranged ship attacks, and then you got squadron attacks, and support doesn't attack at all. Then you have your bonus actions. Special actions of ram and scuttle. When you succeed with a hit, you can use a bonus action to ram or to do ram damage or to scuttle. Bonus actions, you can use a bonus action normal attacks to make multiple attacks as a squadron commander and as a siege commander. And then as reactions, we go over each of these below: deflect, pace, opportunity attacks. So, and then you can blend your actions. Like if I'm the pilot with a siege crew, then I could take command of the siege crew that's on the ship that I'm on. I can move my ship. I can then use my action economy to, say if I have 2 attacks, I could make one attack with the ship melee weapons, and then I could use my other attack to order my siege crew to fire a siege weapon. I then have a bonus action open, which I could make another attack of some sort if I wanted to, but I could also disengage, or I could defend, which is kind of like a dodge for the ship. And then if I had the opportunity to react, I could react as, in this instance, as a siege commander. I could make an opportunity attack against an enemy that's trying to move away. I could pace, which is to sustain distance with another ship while it tries to move. Or I could use a reaction to more quickly reload my siege weapons to fire again. So those are some of the basic roles that we have. But when we apply it, then we have the actual pilot role itself and the mechanics of it. The pilot check, which is a non-skill, which is D20 plus your proficiency bonus and your pilot ability modifier. Pilot passive check is 10 plus your pilot ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus, and then your save is 8 plus your ability modifier and your proficiency bonus. There you go. And your ability modifier can be Constitution, Dexterity, Intelligence, or Wisdom. Take your pick. So a wider range of different stats you can use to become an effective pilot. So like a barbarian with a high constitution makes a really great pilot. Pilots making checks and saves when focusing. While focusing, the pilot uses their own ability modifier when the ship is targeted by an effect, unless the ship material provides a higher bonus. Like metal, like a ship made of metal will potentially have a higher strength or constitution modifier than, say, if a wizard were piloting. So, but like a rogue would probably have a higher dexterity modifier than, like, say, the light wood ship would. So, and the materials are discussed further up above in the Spelljammer section. You see the spellcasting section below for more details. If both you and the ship can be targeted by an effect that would require a saving throw, roll once. If the save is successful, both you and the ship are considered to have succeeded. Otherwise, if the save fails, both fail. Taking damage for a ship. When a ship takes damage, you can choose to use the pilot's hit points to shield the ship from taking some or all of the damage dealt to it. While focusing and not surprised, choose how much damage to take for the ship. Damage taken this way can be reduced by any resistances and other effects such as the warding bond spell, and can be healed as normal. Taking damage for the ship forces you to make a constitution saving throw to maintain focus and concentration of maintaining a spell using the normal rules of concentration. You cannot reduce your hit points below 0 this way. Subtract any remaining damage from the ship's damage reduction score to determine how much damage is taken by the ship. The ship is destroyed at 0 hit points. For example, a creature with 65 hit points is piloting a space galleon with 260 hit points and 10 damage reduction. If a mangonel hits the ship for 70 bludgeoning damage, the pilot can choose to take 20 damage, reducing its hit points to 45. 65 minus 20 is 45. The remaining 50 damage is reduced by 10, dealing 40 damage to the ship, reducing its hit points to 220. There you go. That's how direct damage works. And then we have damage within an area of effect. Yeah, it's very different. Very, very different. A rogue pilot is going to have very different action economy and ability to like roll with hits. It's like what is it? The uncanny dodge, where any single attack you can gain resistance against. So you could do that. You could use uncanny dodge to give yourself use your bonus action to use an object interaction, which allows you to move the ship again, because piloting the ship itself is an object interaction. So a pilot gains a unique bonus because of using item, for instance. The barbarian, yes, has the rage bonus that you could use to the pilot attack, to the melee attacks. Fighter has multiple attacks, so you can use those to get more action economy out of just the weapon systems in general. A paladin can use smite while making a melee ship attack. Yeah, and all the subclass stuff like skirmishing and different dashes. A monk could potentially use ki to stun the pilot on another ship if you're successful in hitting it. Fun stuff like that. Like a monk pilot is freaking awesome. So, damage within an area of effect. So if a ship is within an area of effect that deals damage, a pilot without total cover from the effect is affected as normal. If you take damage and choose to take damage for the ship from the same effect, the Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration and focus is determined by the sum of damage taken. For example, a skiff, illustrated here, is a craft with a damage resistance of 5 that doesn't provide total cover for the pilot, as you can see here. If the ship is within the area of effect, a fireball that deals 28 damage, you must make a dexterity saving throw as normal. If the save fails, you take 28 damage and can choose to take up to 23 damage for the ship. The sum of damage is 51. 5, 23, 5, 8, 23, there you go. The sum of damage is 51, and the Constitution saving throw DC to maintain focus is 25. If you take no damage for the ship, the DC is 14. There you go. Pretty simple rules, straightforward, and this is how I use. These are the same rules that I use for Ranger companions and like Steel Defender or turrets for an Artificer. If you have a pet as part of your class, then you can like the pet has a stack of temporary hit points, like a wolf at 7th level might have like 35 temporary hit points. And once those temporary hit points are gone, the hit point pool is coming off of the Ranger's hit points directly. You can let that wolf die in one hit once it's out of temporary hit points, or you can sacrifice your own hit points to keep that wolf alive. I also like doing this with Echo Knights, by the way. Having the Echo Knight have no hit points at all, and instead, if your Echo is going to be exposed to damage, if it gets hit, it either disappears immediately, or you as the fighter decide to take damage for the Echo, and that Echo can stay in position. So I just think that's a better, I think that's a better narrative, that you're using your own life force for these sort of things, or like your bond with your animal. That bond is represented by the hit points that you share with them, the essence that you share. I mean, that's my personal philosophy. But again, that comes through in my general designs, and this being one of my designs, you'll see that principle present here as well with the ship combat. So like a Star Moth is one of the ships that you end up fighting a lot in the adventure Lattice Zaraxis, and those things are equipped with a mangonel as well as 3 ballista. So it can churn out like D4 times 10 per ballista and like D6 times 10 per mangonel. So you can do like an average hit would be like 2, 4, 7, like around a full barrage of all weapons hitting would be like 110 damage. And again, the Caravel has like only a 260. So you're going to have to eat some damage. Like your ship can survive 2 or 3 volleys of that much damage from a Star Moth. But if you take some damage for the ship, first the team would only be able to fire a volley of that probably at most like once, because of the way that the action economy works. If you fire 4 weapons together, like Star Moths typically have a second rank crew. Ballistas have a reload score of 3 minus your crew rank. It means that the ballistas drop all the way down to a reload score of 1, which means they'll automatically, with a second rank crew, they will automatically be able to reload and fire the ballistas again each round. But it only rolls a D4 on its damage, and most vessels have anywhere from 10 to 20 damage reduction. So against a metal ship like a Night Spider or like a Scorpion ship, half the time a ballista can't do enough damage on its own to pierce the armor, so you have to stack up the weapons. So if it has a reload score of 1, when you roll your command die, like say your command die is a D6 because you're a second rank commander, you're going to be rolling a D6 proficiency die. And every time that your die rolls equal to or higher than the reload score of the weapon crews that you're commanding, that crew will automatically reload its weapon and be able to fire again with the next action. If you fuck up, then you have to spend an action or a bonus action or like a reaction to reload command each weapon independently to reload. So if I'm going to fire 3, if I'm going to fire a ballista at you and it only has a reload score of 1, then on a D6 you're automatically going to reload it. But if you fire 3 ballistas together, then you're going to add up all of the reload scores. So it'd be 3 ballistas that would do 3d4 damage, but it would have a reload score of 3. So on a D6, you have to roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6. So you have basically a 2 and 3 chance of being able to reload those weapons to fire again. But if you miss the roll, then you have to spend an attack to reload you, another attack to reload you, and like either like a bonus action or reaction to reload that third one. And until all those weapons are reloaded, they can't all fire again. if you were to say spend a reaction to reload one ballista and then use your bonus action to fire it again, then it's only going to be doing a d4 times 10 damage by itself, which is great against little fighter craft like this. Like this little skiff has like maybe like 40 hit points, so like up one ballista could potentially knock it out of the sky. So if you're going to be flying around in fighter craft, you're going to need to be a tough. You need to be a tough character. You can use the protection of a larger ship at low levels, but as you get higher levels, you can have characters jumping onto their own fighter craft and being part of a squadron that's attacking a larger ship, while the characters that are squishier or want to defend the ship can stay aboard your carrier and defend the carrier from damage, while your fighters are literally jumping into fighter craft and attacking other ships if they wanted to. Like a rogue in a fighter craft works really well because it has the defensive role, the added extra action economy, and it's up to the DM if you feel that sneak attack can apply to ship attacks or not. Like if you feel like you have a weak spot, it's up to the DM to decide what character features are allowed. By default, I don't allow rogues to use sneak attack to attack ships, but I am not opposed to releasing a new supplement once this is published that has specific action economy and bonuses like an ace pilot or like a stunt pilot as a subclass for the rogue would totally allow them to use sneak attack as part of a melee weapon attack, for instance. Because if you're doing d6 times 10 damage with a mangonel, then you're adding like an extra 3d6 damage from a sneak attack isn't going to break the game, but it's also not going to destroy the ship in one shot. It's going to do extra damage because you found a weak spot. So it's not broken. I just don't offer it by that. That's up to the DM. I just like the idea of the rogue having the rogue being specialized in human anatomy, and not to just by default be able to use sneak attack against ships. But that's a great excuse for a subclass or potentially even a feat. When the martial powers book is done, that would definitely be something that a rogue would be able to purchase as a power to be able to just do. There's a lot of cool stuff we can do with powers once this and that book are both done, for marshals to do like really, really cool piloting and command crap. But one step at a time. We'll work on the martial powers book today at lunch. Actually, in about I'd say in about 5 or 6 hours, I'll be on working on the second episode of working on the Battle Master. We have found that of the 140 powers that we have in the playtest document, there's none of them are doing exactly what a number of the Battle Master maneuvers do, which means that we get to add the Battle Master maneuvers to our list of powers once we convert them to our power system. So we're going to be spending today's episode doing that at lunchtime today. And it will be incredibly fun to blend martial powers and our Spelljammer system to be able to have ship powers. We can also do things like social combat. We can have social powers. I've touched on that a little bit in the past. I'll stop talking about martial powers now and keep focusing on Spelljammer. Sometimes I cross-talk. If you want to know more about martial powers, like and subscribe, and swing by at lunch today to take a gander at what we're doing with the power system. That is going to be a fun book to build. It's probably going to end up being probably a 65-page book, and it hopefully will be a little less intense to work on than this one is. This book is ridiculous. This is taking me a long time to get this fade effect properly, which is a massive pain in the ass. A lot of times I do this fade work off screen because how boring. But if I'm talking about stuff, I guess it's not so bad. I can feel the coffee kicking in, so I've got joy kicking through my system. It's artificial joy in the form of caffeine and adrenaline. That dopamine is dope. Yeah, pilots have a ton of maneuverability. It has the way that Spelljammer is written by for 5th edition. It basically, ships have the hover property. They can stop, turn, sideways, up, down. Like, they have 360 degree movement. They can fly backwards. I like to call it gyroscopic movement. They have just they can freely maneuver in space as easily as a pixie can in a dragon's lair, or a dragon in the sky for that instance. Hover is a great power, and it allows you incredible maneuverability. There are our land vehicle and boat mechanics, like waterborne and landborne vessel mechanics, don't have the same fluid movement, but because Spelljammer is what it is in 5th edition, it allows us to have that incredible level of maneuverability while in space, which isn't necessarily what everyone thinks is the proper way to conduct Spelljammer combat. A lot of people like to add additional mechanics for like turn radius and stuff like that. Like you can like the Salt Marsh rules is you can only turn up to 90 degrees once per turn. Like once per round, your ship moves and then it can turn up to 90 degrees, which is fine. Those are the same rules that we use for waterborne vessels in this supplement. And if you're towing, if this tradesman craft were towing like a rock or a broken ship or something, it wouldn't have that gyroscopic movement anymore. It would also have move in one direction and move up to 90 degrees. That's the penalty of towing stuff. So those mechanics exist inside of this as well. It's just that when a ship is loose and unrestricted, it has hover capabilities and a crapload of maneuverability, which allows you to ignore things like arcs of fire. Like, I don't have to worry about if a gun is at the front of the ship or the back of the ship, because the narrative is that the ship can just roll during combat. Like, I like to think about like the 2007 Battlestar Galactica, the remake, is probably the best example. That and The Expanse are probably the best examples of gyroscopic maneuverability, because like the Valkyries in Battlestar Galactica would literally flip on their nose, flying one way and firing at ships that are chasing after them, just changing their pitch a little bit to be able to aim focus, but they're still letting all of their momentum carry them backwards. And then they can just rotate and flip back around to the front and then take off again. So during a round of combat, they can drift in one direction and act as a turret to change the direction to fire at anything around them without changing their angle. But also during mid-combat, while they're on that turret fight, they can fire side rockets and stuff to be able to like juke sideways back and forth, like to avoid obstacles they can see coming, even though they're not actually pointed in that direction. So Spelljammer by default has that same level of maneuverability, which some people agree with and don't. But the great thing about this system in particular is that if you don't like a particular mechanic, it's all piecemeal. So like if you like my action economy dealing with siege weapons and that's it, then that's all you need this book for, our siege mechanic, our siege weapon reload rules. And if you want to use Salt Marsh for your normal maneuverability, great. Then that just means that your pilot has a lot of action economy left over that they can use to help command ship crew, like siege weapon crews, or support like with spell casting and stuff like that. You're just freeing up the action economy. If you don't like a rule for my action economy, then it frees you up to use that action economy the way that you think it should be used otherwise. So like all the exploration mechanics that are in here work in any D20 game, regardless of if you're on a ship or not. Like the rules for spotting objects at great distances applies to anybody, even if you're like on the wall of a castle and you're trying to see if there's troops hiding in the tree line that's, 200 yards away. Like, great, there we have rules for being able to spot medium-sized objects with cover that far away. Here's your DC. Like, we break down your DC for anything to be able to notice things, observe things, investigate stuff, notice details. Like, that alone is, honestly, I think really useful. Because I don't see Spelljammer, I haven't seen any supplements in Spelljammer really addressing, like, if I'm a medium-sized creature and I'm drifting without a ship through the void, how far away, how close does a ship need to get before I have a chance of being seen and rescued, from drifting and suffocating in space? Like, there's no rules about that, like, anywhere. So it was fun building those very basic rules of physics. Like, if an asteroid smashes into a moon and cuts it in half, how long does it take? Like, how much damage does that take? How big does that asteroid need to be? What does that do to the atmosphere? If the moon had an atmosphere, what does it do to that? We have rules for all of that in the exploration chapter. If I start a fire on the ship, how long is it going to take for that fire to destroy my air supply and cause the air to become poisonous with smoke? I have rules for that. Like, a lot of very basic physics is in the exploration chapter. And the exploration chapter is the next chapter that we'll be illustrating. So when we get to it, we'll get to it. And we'll talk about that. But the fact that I just have stuff to talk about that is a consistent mechanics that a DM can use to make rulings about how shit shakes out in space, instead of having to make it up and try to remember what their ruling was so that they can maintain consistent. Instead of just guessing every time, have a basic template of what to do. That's what we're trying to provide. So if you don't like my combat system, you'll probably love my exploration stuff regardless. Or if you don't like my exploration, maybe you like my ship hazards about fires and crew mutinies, stuff like that. So it's also providing like some very light mechanics on how to command NPCs, because this book was born from our command system for mass combat and leading a guild or a kingdom. So there's all these little fun mechanics from that supplement about how to stay in command of angry NPC followers, hirelings, morale, which isn't addressed anywhere in 5e. And there's a lot of supplements that have addressed stuff like that, but most of them don't actually use 5e mechanics for their mass combat and guild and kingdom leadership stuff. Even WotC doesn't use 5e mechanics for mass combat. They built a whole board game. They've built 2 board games. Skirmish, which doesn't use actual 5e mechanics for combat and doesn't address small groups very well. And then the Dragonlance board game for mass combat, which also doesn't use 5e. It uses like 2d6. Like, what are you guys doing? You're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Couldn't you figure out how to use 5e mechanics for your 5e games? I think it's embarrassing. They would say, no, we're just trying to broaden the IP of Dragonlance so that people that aren't familiar with Dungeons & Dragons might be interested with it. It's like, well, they'd be a lot more interested if while they were playing your board game, they were actually learning 5e mechanics along the way. So that if they decide, wow, that was cool, I think I want to play Dragonlance as like a D&D game. It's like, oh my god, all these rules make so much sense. I already learned how to do all this combat stuff using 5e mechanics when I was playing the board game. This is so intuitive. They spent 2 years building that board game, and they couldn't figure out how to have that conversation with people that would be buying the game. I punch up a lot on this channel. And I criticize WotC because obviously things can be done if you had the heart and the patience to do it. But corporations, I don't think corporations are good for the creative space. I want to see all the AAA game, video game developers, and I want to see all the high corporation board games and role-playing games. I want to see them all burn. I don't think any of them deserve the right to have access to games, because they don't care. I'd be fine with them sponsoring independent developers, but like, keep your goals out of my ideation. Like, the only monetization they should get is selling the game because it's good. I'm okay with a subscription for a game that's not like a multiplayer game where you have multiple people engaging together. I'm okay with a subscription model for that. But I think Larian did it right, man. Build a game, make it done. Make it available for multiplayer if you want. Almost done with this fade. It takes a while. Smudgery do. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Smudge button. There you go. Gonna make you sweat till you bleed. Yeah, using these mechanics is very possible for you to be able to destroy a ship in like 4 or 5 rounds, which helps lean into the narrative that Wizards used, where they treat ships as floating dungeons that they want you to engage at the 5-foot scale, so you can do all the things that your character is supposed to be able to do. So these rules here allow you to not do that, and to be able to have combat and finish that combat in 3 to 5 rounds, which is supposedly typical for 5e games. But that also means that your ship could be destroyed in 3 to 5 rounds. So that helps lean into the narrative of, our ship is getting torn apart. If we close distance and board them, we can keep them from destroying our ship by killing their crew and then potentially taking their ship. Like, that's good narrative. That leans into why you would want to board a ship and pull weapons, pull swords, and start attacking crew individually. Because if you kill the crew, they can't shoot your ship anymore. Like, that's a really, really good reason for you to close distance and board the ship and start having combat as Wizards assumes that you would. Not because it's the only thing they offer you, and there you go, but because ship combat is fucking dangerous. By the time, if you're in the first tier, like first 3 or 4 levels, you're probably going to want to close distance and try to board the enemy ship to take it over, instead of having to try to use your hit point pool to keep your ship alive. But you have the ability to have, if you're beating your opponents, or by the time you're like level 5 to 7, you're going to find ship combat is really inviting, because you can survive it long enough to potentially take out 2 or 3 ships by yourself. And by the time you get to the 3rd and 4th tier, you could be taking on, you could be commanding a fleet or squadron of ships and be fighting at a much larger scale of battle. Again, using the same action economy that we use for siege weapons. It's just that the number of ships that you use affects your reload score as opposed to the number of melee weapons, number of ship weapons that you use. It's just at a larger scale. And so what's to prevent your character from amassing a ton of ships and becoming unstoppable as a fleet of pirates, right? Like with like 15 ships all firing 4 or 5 weapons a piece at a time, raining down like 800 points of damage onto a castle. Well, the reason you can't do that is you got to get the ships. So how long is it, like how long and how much of a quest is it for you to assemble a fleet in the first place? That could take 4 or 5 levels by itself. And then once you have that fleet, how many people know that you're assembling this fleet and are attempting to stop you? So now you're fighting other fleets that have assembled to prevent you from becoming a new pirate warlord in the region. They can scale up too. And if they're scaling up as well as you, then if you're taking 600 hit points in a hit, you can't soak that. My barbarian can't take 600 damage, even if he's raging and has warding bond on him. He can't mitigate all that damage for your squadron. You're gonna start losing ships, and once you start losing ships, you start losing firepower, and then it becomes a point of how many ships are you gonna lose before you run away, or can you find the commander of that fleet and board his craft and kill that crew so you can cut the head off of the commander. So the fleet becomes disorganized and less effective and starts breaking up into little smaller squadrons that your fleet can start picking off or capturing and growing your crew. So there's a lot deeper narrative available for there. Like this is just trying to take what Wizards provide in 5e and provide more context and more options to make it fun to actually play by the rules. Like take all the rules that they actually established, what few there are, and just add depth to it, add iteration, add logic to make them all work. And I'm just about done. I think I'm okay with that background. So now we get to work on the fireball. There's that, and then there's the original fireball that we had. Big bada boom. So we'll leave that one concealed. We'll go back to this one. Let's see what we can do. Gonna make you sweat till you bleed. I'm going to end up scrapping a lot of this texture that's inside of there to get this effect going, but I'm just going to have to be okay with that. So for now, we're just going to do this. I'm going to hide that streak and just stick with the actual fireball itself. Big bada boom. Yeah, we had to make a very conscious decision about ramping damage. Like spellcasting doesn't deal extra damage because ships don't honestly have that many hit points. Like when your siege weapons are doing like D4, D6, D8, D10 damage on a hit times 10. and like the largest ship, which is a hammerhead ship, is the largest ship that they offer in the book. And they could get up to 500 feet, but a hammerhead ship or a squid ship are 250 feet, which means they have 500 hit points. That's the maximum amount of hit points that are offered in the original Spelljammer supplement. So we haven't added extra ships yet, but we'll get to them. But as such, 500 hit points, and you're going to be dealing, say 2d6 times 10 damage at a decent level, right? By the time you get in the second level, you can realistically attack once or twice a round, dealing 2d6 times 10 damage. This times 10 damage multiplier that we're dealing with is essentially, if we chop off the multipliers, you essentially have 2d6 damage that you're dealing once or twice per round against an opponent that has 50 hit points. That's basically how it breaks down. It doesn't take long to have a combat end at that scale. So the pacing that we have for combat is a lot faster than doing 3d10 damage every third round of combat against a ship that has 500 hit points. It's fucking ridiculous. Like you can never finish a fight that way. Trying to smudge this stuff out. I know I'm destroying all the texture in here, but it's okay. We have a plan. We have a plan. I'm going to pan out a little bit here, I think. Let's hide the skiff. Let me just work this. But yeah, on a ship, there's very little reason to spend resources on ships using Spelljammer as written. So the mechanics that we're providing here is giving you opportunities to use all of your spells and all your class features and stuff to make more of a difference for your team as part of the ship. But yeah, so if we were talking about, I remember the point now. We were talking about amplifying damage. Yeah, the spell casting, smites, sneak attack, none of those things increase, multiply damage. If a ship only has at most 500 hit points and your rogue is capable of hitting for 10d6 times 10 damage, it can potentially destroy almost any ship that is in, it can destroy any ship in the book in one hit. That is not what's intended. So it was interesting figuring out where the line on that is, and ultimately it boiled down to nothing multiplies damage at all. It would be considered a waste of time for a paladin to spend casting Searing Smite to deal an extra d6, extra 2d6 damage against a ship that has 300 hit points. But a 14th level paladin throwing a 4th level spell slot to deal an extra 50 damage when the opponent only has maybe 300 hit points, yeah, that's pretty significant, especially if it's on a crit. Yeah, he's gonna dump those hit points in. That becomes viable. So spell damage becomes significant unto itself, as the characters gain levels. You don't need to amplify spell damage. I've seen some options that suggest amplifying spell damage that way, but it's not really taking into account just the amount of damage that ships can deal and take, and that spells aren't intended to be amplified like that. Then you have to start creating artificial rules like, well, you know, you can deal 300 damage on a Ray of Frost. Well, let's be realistic. A Ray of Frost is like D8, like does 3d8 damage at 11th level, right? So that's going to be what? 3d8 is going to average around like 10, maybe 12 damage. Then if you have something that's going to allow it to amplify times 10, that's a cantrip that's going to be dealing 100 points of damage per pop. And it's only going to take 3 cantrip shots to destroy almost any ship that's in the book. That's too much damage. And what would prevent you from dealing that much damage to a nearby city, for instance? Nothing. Like there's a logic hole there when you pan out from the problem of ship combat using spells in ship combat, and then you start to apply it to the larger universe around you. Like that might, maybe you have a system that allows that to work, but it's not going to work when you think about characters running around in that same space at the 5-foot scale. If your system has to have, like, you can't use this outside of 5 foot, like outside of the ship combat. Like, well, your character's going to try, and when you say no, it's the walk away from that is that the system isn't fully baked. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody and there's a lot of systems that use that same approach, but again, it's not really thoroughly baking what the narrative of the campaign is. Like, if all you're doing is running around in mecha, and so all the like mega damage that you're dealing, like Palladium uses mega damage. If you have a mecha that's like 40 feet tall, it might have like 1 point of mega damage is worth 100 or I don't remember 100 or 1,000 damage of regular hit points. So like if you get hit with a missile that deals D4 mega damage, it's going to be like D4 times 100 damage that civilian takes. That guy's going to be dead. Or like that car can only take like 70 points of damage. A missile's absolutely going to destroy that car, which is appropriate. But it's taking into account that, yeah, this stuff will absolutely slaughter your normal characters. They need to be protected from that. And yes, like if your building isn't reinforced with mega damage structure, then it's going to have normal hit point capacity, and a missile will absolutely destroy your building. I won't use real life examples because people can trigger off and stuff like that. But if you drop a missile into a regular building, like an apartment building, that building is going to get destroyed. If you drop a missile on a bunker, that bunker may survive the hit because it would have the structural, the reinforced structure to be able to survive an airstrike like that. So you have to be able to think about the interaction between these things. And if your system doesn't properly interact at these different scales, the walk away from it is, I guess that was fun, but it's stifling because we can't actually do what we want to do. So if instead you don't allow extra damage, like you can amplify a spell to hit further away or to deal a larger area of effect, but like if I amplified this fireball to like say the 500-foot scale, so that instead of a 20-foot radius is going to be a 2,000-foot radius, it's still only going to do 8d6 damage to everything that's in that 2,000-foot radius. That's not nearly the same problem that you would have if you were to drop a fireball on Waterdeep that is 2,000 feet in scale and dealing 8d6 times 100 damage. Like, that is going to absolutely fucking destroy Waterdeep. What's preventing anyone from doing that? Intimidation? No. That doesn't make sense. But it does make sense that if I drop an 8d6 fireball onto a community, some of those buildings are going to get destroyed, but a lot of them aren't. They'll be caught, maybe they'll be caught on fire, but they aren't destroyed. Like the team, like a community can fight back, like can put out the fires, and only some of the community is going to be destroyed. But some of the community is going to be destroyed by a regular fireball already anyway. Now it's just a matter of scale, but it's not so insane. That's like, well, there goes Waterdeep. You know, it took one round to destroy Waterdeep. No, it's not going to work out that way. But your rules have to be able to take that into account. So again, not throwing shade at other producers. It's just this is one of the things that we had to think long and hard about when we were building these mechanics. And that was one of the things that we really needed to make sure that we could walk away from. Like, we need to make sure this stuff works at all levels of scale, because these are the problems that players are running into using other systems. And some of those systems might have a lot of advantages over what we're maybe they have. I don't think they have any advantages over what we're offering here. I think this is the most thorough exploration of space physics and combat for 5th edition stuff that's been presented yet, personally. But if it's not to your taste, again, it's all piecemeal, so you can take whatever you want from this and use it with whatever system you think is best. And I would celebrate you for that. And that was our solution, by the way. Fuzz out the fireball in general and then just drop in the same fireball language again. And here's our skiff. So, no hate being sent at anybody. It's just, this supplement is actively attempting to address all of those things, and I think we did a really good job with it. So when it publishes, it's worth your time taking a look at it, and if you agree it adds to the quality of your game, then I invite you to use it. Maybe even purchase it. But I'm monologuing again. I'm going to stop monologuing. Where are we at on our time? 7:30? Okay. This is our last 20 minutes for today. You have this explosion eating up some of the ship. Demonstrate that they're actually caught in the middle of this. That's pretty dope. So let's see, where are we at inside of here? Do I have air bubbles someplace? Yeah, I got air bubbles. I got the air bubbles. I got all the air bubbles. Let's go grab one. Yogi here in the back. Night Spider. I will happily admit this system isn't perfect, but it's not perfect for a great reason, which is space. There's a lot of physics that you have to ground through when you're dealing with ships that have nearly infinite speed. So there is, let's see, this is supposed to go down into the tradesmen here. And that flaw is that there's a lot of movement rules that are optional. I mean, you can ignore them if you want to, but at some point people are going to be like, exactly how fast can I land on this asteroid? I'm coming in pretty hot. We have answers for that, but that requires additional considerations. Like if you're flying at 10,000 miles per round and you want to touch down on an asteroid from 10,000 miles per round to 5 feet per round so you can land safely, we have rules for that, which means that it's added complexity if you choose to use those rules. But once you get, I mean, all those rules kind of fold together, and like how are you using action economy, how are you scaling movement, being able to change the scale of movement from 5 feet to 50 feet to 500 feet to thousands of miles. These are things that need to be considered. So we have to provide rules for them because they are legitimate questions. So once we address them and you kind of just grok what they mean, then they're no longer like a big issue, and they can just fade to the background. But there has to be information presented about that, and that means that there's a lot of information being presented about how movement works, how scaling moves, how you interact with objects, and it requires a lot of visuals to be able to provide examples to explain that stuff. And that might be a level of complexity that some people are going to bounce off of. And if they do, great, ignore that. Use Saltmarsh. The Saltmarsh rules aren't enough to be able to explain the complexity of space travel. But if your table isn't asking those questions, then you don't technically need it. This is a really deep dive into space physics on how all these things can work using 5e mechanics as presented, using 5e core or variant rules offered in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Like everything in this book is inspired by and provided through the Player's Handbook or the Dungeon Master's Guide, which was one of the major design goals of this project, was to make sure everything that we have in here is using mechanics that characters, or at least the DM, should be familiar with if they're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons in general. But it wasn't easy. It took a while. It's still taking a while, but again, all the really cool shit that I make, it takes a while to build it because we're fucking with the core chassis of what 5e is without breaking what 5e is. That's not a small task, so I'm actually really proud. Like someone telling me something took a long time to make doesn't impress me, because my shit, like, this has taken 2 years to build. It's like for me to run around and say, boy, this took a lot of effort for me to build, I hope you like it. It's like, that's like an understatement. That is such an understatement that I wouldn't say that. that is not what I need to do for you to be able to understand how much effort that went into this, which is kind of why I'm doing this stream, so I don't have to tell you. You can just look at it. Modify, contract by 4 pixels. Let's do that again. Select, modify, contract by 2 pixels, and then we're going to select inverse and then delete. That creates a neat little shell effect. So now we got our help. Now we got our ship in a bubble, and I think I want to drop the background on this bubble. Now we can leave that one at 10%. It is where it's supposed to be. This one. That feels good. I think that's Arpopo. Let's duplicate this one to get more of that sheen in there. I love that. That seems more appropriate. I love these air bubble effects, man. They're so fun. I think they're a really great way to be able to separate the... Here, I'm going to drop the opacity on this a bit. Being able to properly define the space that a ship is occupying, or anything in space is occupying, by having these little spherical shells around them. I mean, planets have them. Planets are round anyway, right? It's kind of cheating. Fucking nice. Let's go back to, let's see, let's figure out the streak now. Yo. Bop bop. Oodle bop bop. I get frustrated with how big this project is because of how long it takes, but I keep falling in love with every illustration that we do. Like, I love this picture at this point. I don't think there's a single illustration that I've finished or even gotten close to finishing that I'm just not utterly happy with. That's great news, because there's not a ton of these things that we need to do. There's like maybe 15 more illustrations like this we have to finish. There's a shitload of diagrams that we have to do. Here, I'll show you. Like, I'll show you guys when we're about to wrap up. So, but yeah, honestly, it's 7:45 in the morning here in Seattle, so we're actually about ready to wrap up. So I'm gonna fuck around with this streak effect here for a few minutes, and then I'll show you some of the diagrams that we've been building off screen. God, that's so cool. All right, so when we come back tomorrow, we'll drop in color onto the skiff, drop color onto the tradesmen, and that'll probably finish the illustration. So I don't assume that we're gonna have this one done tomorrow morning, considering, you know, how quickly I produce art. But I think we're realistically going to be done on Thursday with this piece, and then moving on to the next one. So, God, that's fucking exciting, man. It's just these. I'm really happy with how small, I'm making illustrations in this particular project. We've done a pretty good job with that. There are some bigger spaces that we're going to have to fill up with like quarter pages. We have a couple more quarter pages to do in this book, and we saw last week how long those quarter pages can take with the navigator and the necklace of air. Those took a little while for us to build, but I was incredibly satisfied. Oh god, yeah, and the Berserker pilot. That took for fucking ever. But it was worth it. It was totally worth it. So we're saving here. We're gonna pick up the skiff and the tradesman craft tomorrow, see how far we can get. But I am digging this narrative. So let's that's saved. Let me show you what we've been working on. Some diagrams here. So this is a work in progress here, but here. Grappling claws, weapon, hit points, grappling claws. Here we have ship melee weapon damage. The size of space that the ship occupies determines the amount of damage that you're going to deal. If a space at the 50-foot scale, vessels typically occupy 2 to 5 squares at the 50-foot scale using siege weapons, and are considered occupying 10 squares at the 5-foot scale for mounted melee weapons. So, and then craft occupied 2 to 10 squares at the 5-foot scale using mounted weapons. So, space occupied, a vessel occupies, like this Scorpion ship here, it occupies a 2x2 space at the 50-foot scale. So that, oh shit, I just locked up somehow. Let's save this and reopen it. This is definitely going to be the last thing we do today, but it's fun to show off. There, close that out and we'll open it back up again. There. And here we have a Manta craft. These are 5-foot squares, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. This is a 35 by 40 foot, so it occupies a 40-foot space, right? So this occupies a 100-foot space. This occupies a 40-foot space. Different scales, 50-foot scale, 5-foot scale. Spaces occupy 1 to 2 at the siege scale. So these claws, therefore, deal... Each of these claws deal D4 times 10 damage. The manta ray, with its grippy front claw, which isn't how manta rays work. I know that, like real manta rays, those are like really complicated nose organs that those things are, and they sense like electromagnetic energy. But in the ship, it's a pinchy claw. So get around the fantasy. It's a 40-foot craft, which means it occupies 7 or 8 squares. Which means at the mounted scale, it deals 48 damage. Notice that 10 squares at the 5-foot scale is 5d8 damage, and 1 square at the 50-foot scale is d4 times 10 damage. This is curvature. This is how you can scale things from the 5-foot scale to the 50-foot scale to the 500-foot scale smoothly between different objects. So this mounted craft is going to deal 4d8 damage on a hit. These pincer claws are going to deal d4 times 10 damage on a hit. And they have special rules. Grappling claws, crew, 1 pilot, because they're mounted, because they're ship melee weapons, which means that they're commanded by the pilot. So it only requires 1 crew, which is the pilot. The reach is determined by the ship size, which is on basically the size of space that you occupy is your reach, just like at the 5-foot scale. A gargantuan creature that fills a 20-foot space has a 20-foot reach. A huge creature that fills a 15-foot space has a 15-foot reach. A scorpion ship that has a 100-foot space that it occupies has a 100-foot reach. That's probably the most unrealistic thing about this system, which is just extracted from... It might not be the best way to do things, but it's the most intuitive way to do things, because we're trying to be as intuitive as possible to recreate the 5-foot scale combat at the 50 and 500-foot scale for ships as well. So it's a transparent, intuitive experience. If you understand how 5e combat works in the player's handbook, you understand how ship combat works in the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book. So, claws, there you go. Damage, bludgeoning, determined by ship size, which we just determined the damage by ship size. Special, grappling attack. When an attack hits, you can choose to grapple the target. There you go. Grappling happens automatically, and it's up to the grappled target to use their action economy to break free from the grapple. If I can hit you with a melee attack, I automatically grapple you if I want. Special, slashing grip. As a bonus action, a grappling claw can deal... Actually, that should be crushing grip, not slashing grip. I'm going to fix that. That's why we do these things. As a bonus action, a grappling claw can deal bludgeoning damage determined by the size of the ship to grapple. As a bonus action, a grappling claw can deal bludgeoning damage to a grappled target. No, I think I did that right. As a bonus action, a grappling claw can deal bludgeoning damage to... Actually, I don't think I need that. Bludgeoning damage to a grappled target. Yeah, maybe I can get away without having that extra line. As a bonus action, a grappling claw can automatically deal bludgeoning damage to a grappled target. I think that's a better way of wording that. Just because I have it in here, I'm writing text and I'm adding art, doesn't mean that I can't go back and fix the text to make it word better. And down here we have grappling tentacles. This is a Nautilus, which is a 200-foot by... it's a 4x4 space that occupies. It's a 200-foot vessel. I just trimmed it because of the border. And then this is a cuttlefish, which is a 4x4 at the 5-foot scale. It's a 20-foot gargantuan fighter craft. But both of them use grappling tentacles. So, crushing grip. As a bonus action, a grappling tentacle can deal bludgeoning damage determined by the determined by ship size to a grappled target. I think I'd probably word that better. Special, elithid ships only. Teleport. As a bonus action, when a tentacle grapples a target, instead of dealing damage, the tentacle can force the creature to make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target is teleported to an unoccupied space aboard the elithid ship. A siege grappling tentacle can teleport a target up to 20 feet in size. A mounted grappling tentacle can teleport a target up to 5 feet in size. Both the Nautiloid and the Cuttlefish have storage pins on board. That, for the Cuttlefish, you can put up to 2 medium-sized creatures in it, and the Nautiloid has shitloads of space for multiple slaves. But this is the kind of work that we're doing to be able to demonstrate, like, here's claw weapons, here's tentacle weapons, and we'll be doing that throughout the book. Here's another one. This is dealing with reach. So we have a 200. This is still work in progress, but this is a 200-foot night spider. It has a 200-foot reach. Here's a 50-foot. Here's a spiderling that's 40 feet. At the 5-foot scale, it has a 40-foot reach. The rule here is that a craft at the 50-foot scale, craft larger than 25 feet can attack targets in an adjacent 50-foot square. So here we have a spiderling at the 50-foot scale. It's more than 25 feet. It can attack up to 50 feet away. 50-foot scale, 5-foot scale. That's the language that we're building. And then we have over here mounted weapons. We need to write example in here. This is older text. But basically, here's a spiderling. It's making attacks It has rules for what kind of objects a siege weapon and a mounted weapon can engage. And then down here, we're looking at a siege weapon and mounted weapons. Siege weapons can attack a ship, no problem. Siege weapons can attack objects smaller than 50 feet at disadvantage, but if it has cover, you can't attack it at all. So the siege weapon can attack the ship normally. It can attack this mangonel at disadvantage because it's smaller than 50 feet in size, but it has no cover. But this character here and these ballistas both have partial cover, which means that the siege weapon can't attack them at all. But these mounted weapons can attack the ship at normal, can attack this mangonel normal, but would have to deal with the cover that both this character and these ballista have. And since they're half cover each, it'd just be a +2 to their armor class. But these are mounted weapons. They're only doing like 2d8 damage. So they're not doing ridiculous. Like this character can survive a hit from a 2d8 harpoon. So that's fair. The siege weapon, as long as this character is keeping cover and not being pulled out into the open, the siege weapon can't hit her. She's not going to get killed from one ballista bolt punching a hole through her body because she's got cover. And the target is too small for the ballista to hit because of the cover. Rules, physics, things that make sense, self-reinforcing rules inside of the game that make the narrative work and keeps it fun. So anyway, so these are some of the diagrams that we're building. So we have a number of them that we have to build that are works in progress that we build off screen. So like we'll have little things here. This could be an actual illustration that we can occupy here, but it'll also have like little language things for harpoon flinger and arcane cannons down here. Like here's another one. Like we can occupy this space. So we're building all these. These are the things that we're building, but this is like art space. So we got like 3-4 illustrations here. Diagrams, 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 diagrams. These are all the diagrams that you have to build to explain the different physics and how the ships work together. But that's what we're building. So, but they're boring to build. So we build them off screen so I don't have to waste your time with it. So we focus our attention on the artwork that we're doing, like the ship art that we're doing during the mornings. And then in the evenings when I'm off screen and spending time, off screen, I build those diagrams to show how these mechanics work. So when you go into your map, you'll literally see how these things are operating together because we're demonstrating that. So, but hey, that's life. That's life. Woo. Anyway, I'm out of here for the day. I'm going to be back in. Oh God, it's 8 o'clock. Yep, I'll be back in 5 hours. I'll be back in 5 hours to work on the Battle Master for the Martial Power System. If you're new here, if any of this shit seems cool to you, stick around. Check out some of the other stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and thanks for being around. Really appreciate you. Howdy for now. See you guys in